Now, pardon me, I left off on how this year and last year we have a lot of vocabulary. Next year we're going to start tying ideas in together. And one of the big challenges is going to be Romans, okay? Romans 2 through 12 and so forth. Tying all that in together. Paul's law in Greece. Teachings, okay? I will back off of vocabulary and go into big ideas and so forth. If we're not in the rapture, which is sad to say that because we're groaning. Paul said we groan, and we sure do groan. If there was ever groaning time in America, it's groaning time now. But here's the point. We're going to tackle some ideas and put some ideas together. For the past year or so, we've been getting into vocabulary, so that when you read your Bible, you know what you're reading. We've been getting in. We got into a lot of beauty. I was pointing out all the beautiful things that Christians are going to get in detail a little, which is Revelation chapter 2 and 3. Okay? Now I have to bring that back up in a week or two. That's going to be one of the permanent templates here. That we go over once every 2 weeks. We just went over the rapture again. That's once every 2 weeks. I have agape over here. We're going to really spend a lot of time talking about agape here. It's a big issue here. It's one of the biggest issues. Because the rapture is essentially agape. That's what the rapture is. The rapture is love. That's exactly what it is. And then we have living bread I'm going to add. Those are requirements in sound doctrine. What are the requirements, Jeremiah? What is good and what the Lord requires of you? Micah 6:8. So I'm going to spend a lot of time on that because don't you want to know what it takes to get where you're going? I would hope so. John chapter 14. Where I'm going, you know, and you know the way. You know where heaven is, and you know how to get there. Some of you have noticed that Dr. Jeremiah, he likes to stick to the basics and the fundamentals of Christianity. When we get to prophecy here later on, we're not going to spend that much time talking about the beast. I'm going to go back to the beast again at the end of this year. The two beasts and so forth. We're not going to sit and park on that. We're going to always go, we're going to return to the rapture, to love and koinonia and fellowship and the joy of the Lord, love joy and being beloved. That's what we're going to focus on. Because that's really where you're going. You're not going to the beast. So why spend so much time on it? You should talk about where you're going. Now, I'm talking about it in general right now. I already have a lot of beast lessons up. I'm just telling you that that's becoming a new focus here, and we're getting away from this, so many hours of the beast routine. We're not going to do that anymore, and we will do it because we're supposed to. It's in the Bible, but that's not my point. Or don't miss the point. We need a lot of time spent on the beauty and where you're going, because where you're going is beautiful. So why not talk about it? That's the point. I belong to quite a few ministries in my life, and most of the ministry talk was not about where you're going in detail, which doesn't make any sense in my opinion. I would think that a lot of conversation should be centered around where you're going, who you're going to be with, and make that the centerpiece. Paul said, what is your joy? What is our crowning of rejoicing? What are we really happy about the most here? That's what Paul says to the Thessalonians. Well, okay, we're going to do exactly what Paul said. We're going to make that our top rejoicing subject. Or rather, our top subject that we're going to rejoice in. And people who don't do that, they're not really on the ball. They're not getting a B in the class. Because you shouldn't focus on too much negativity when there's so much positive coming your way. You shouldn't do that. You should talk a lot about what's going to make you happy as opposed to what evil the beast is going to do next week. Okay? That's just simple logic from this ministry's perspective. That's just simple logic for me. It's a simple reasoning. I don't see how anybody can debate that. Although I've had run into Bible teachers and ministries where they really didn't want to do that. And in retrospect, I just don't see how they kind of came to that conclusion. And it's their business. And all these people are lovable people. That's not my point. My point is that to me, it's reasonable for us to focus on the good that's coming to you, the goodness of God that's coming to you. That's why I spent so many months last year on beauty and Revelations 2 and 3. Revelation chapter 2 and 3. Because the Master gives you a whole line of beautiful things He's going to give you. And to ignore that is, what are you doing? You want to talk about fighting the devil between David and Goliath every night? A fight, a war, all of this stuff. Is that really what you want to do every day? And no, not here. We will talk about fighting. Timothy, be a good soldier, Timothy. We talk about war here and a battle, battles within and battles without, but we're not going to focus on that. Okay? And we have this competing light here. I apologize. I have a lot of what you might call ghetto lighting here, but anyway, let's just go. I'm not going to worry about the lighting here. Let's get to 31 as I bounce around here talking about a few different subjects. Let's go to 31 in Romans. Are you ready? So our first word is reign. Reign. What does reign mean, Paul, when you say, do not let sin reign in your mortal bodies, but mortify the flesh? So that means that you're going to be dominated by doing the right thing. Okay? You're going to be dominated by loving righteousness and hating evil. And this becomes one of the major points of Paul's lessons and your entire Bible, which is dominate. I will not allow anything to dominate me. That's what Paul says. Other than the righteousness and the teachings of the gospel. Don't let sin reign in your mortal bodies, which is very simply stated, just don't be about the business of doing the wrong thing. Because when you do that, that is what is your ruler. The rulership of you and who you glorify is based upon what you do. And there's only two realms that you glorify. You glorify light or you glorify darkness. And Paul is saying, let light rule over you. The Lord cannot rule over anyone who doesn't practice righteousness. As soon as they practice darkness, the dark ruler is over you. Now, there's one caveat to this, or one loophole to this, and that is that obviously there are going to be a lot of Christians who are going to have problems with sin. But the point still remains, get your act together ASAP. And you do that by allowing the power and the force to flow through you. You have to allow it. You can't block it. Okay? It's not your power. It's not your guidance. Okay? However, obviously the word is allow, let. All these terms refer to individual will and yielding. Okay? The word is volition. That's why the master said, goodwill towards men. Peace on earth, goodwill towards men. Goodwill. What does goodwill mean? It means that the Lord is saying, basically, I hope this works out for you. Like when someone sends you on a journey, they say, bonjour. That means good journey, which means what? I hope that you have a good journey, and that good journey is based upon the fact of you using your head. If you don't use your head, the journey is not going to be good. Buongiorno. Okay? Let's go to fear and wrath. One of the big issues here in Christianity is the same old story in the Old Testament, which is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Having the respect of the Creator on many levels. And essentially the person who respects God is the one that's going to end up in the garden. In other words, Father said something, let's pay attention. Okay? That's one reason why it's irritating to be around people who are part of the apostasy right now in 2023, who you mention respecting the Lord pertaining to His commandments, and they tell you that they don't like His commandments. The whole goal of Christianity is to respect the authority of the Lord and Master. That's essentially what Christianity is. And when people come around and they say they're privileged, they can be gold bricks, and they don't have to do what everybody else has to do, kind of, and they become irritating after a while, don't they? Because they're disrespecting the Master. The Master said, go do this. Let's go do it. I don't really think I need to go do that. The Master told Adam and Eve, leave the tree alone. Do what I tell you. Now, for 2,000 years, the Christ Church is here, and the Lord Jesus Christ is telling you to go to the tree, go to the cross, go to the gospel, go to the commandments, fulfill the royal law, go do it right now. Obey the gospel right now. Do it. And all you got to do is not do it, and you're not respecting the authority, and we're right back to the same thing again. We have condemnation. We got a problem. And the word in the dictionary might be insubordination. That's what that means, okay? Insubordination to the gospel is death. It's the same story in the Garden of Eden. God told Joshua, have I not commanded you, Joshua? And of course, if you love God, you're going to do what He says. One of the most important scriptures in the Bible is where Jesus comes to Peter and He asks him, do you love me? Why? Because he's not doing anything. He's not serving the church. In other words, love is activity. That's the point. If you're sitting on your can and you're not doing anything, maybe you don't love. That's the point. I always use this example. My parents, they rarely told me, son, I love you, kind of stuff. You know what they did? They showed it. Missouri, the show me state. Don't talk about it so much. Why don't you just go do it? If you cook, you clean, and you make the bed, and you make dessert, okay, you don't even have to tell me, okay? Okay, your actions tell me what you are and who you are. In America, we have a state called Missouri. It's called the show me state. Okay, show me. America is a place where people, they do a lot of talking. A lot of people are that way, all around the world. Show and tell. Show me. The master asked Peter, do you love me 3 times? Why? Because love is getting out there and helping people, and end of story. I've done some counseling here recently through some people here. It wasn't online, and there was a couple of counseling little sessions, informal counseling, and we were talking, and I basically asked the individual. I said, "What are you doing in a concrete fashion to help people? What are you doing? Is there anything you're involved with helping people in general? Yes or no?" I go to Starbucks, I go on Amazon, and I watch American R-rated movies, and I take care of my cat, and that's what I do. And basically I said, it sounds like a loser profile. I'm not saying you're a loser, I'm saying it looks like you are. If someone were to ask me, are you a loser? I would probably say, I think we have a loser on our hands. Okay, that's just that simple. And if you don't like that, or you disagree, or it matters nothing to me, essentially, because that's the life you chose. And you chose it, so enjoy it. Has anyone offered you a position in the church to help out? If they did and you say no, okay, that tells me who you are. Don't tell me you love or you care. Give me your resume. I'm a caring person. Well, we sure hope you are. But are you a caring person that's saved and you're really caring? Through the fire you care. That's the kind of care we're looking for. And I always refer to my parents as a really good example, boots on the ground for me, because it was through the fire that they cared. It was kind of obvious. These are real down and in the mud caring soldiers. And it doesn't matter what comes their way, they're right there and they're caring. Not a lot of yip-yap about it. Not a lot of, and I'm not putting down people talking to you about caring. That's not the point. The point is I don't need it if you show it. That's the point. That's why the master asked Peter, do you love me? Because love is getting things done. You go to Starbucks, you watch basketball, baseball, you shop on Amazon, you wear clothing that's improper, which is what most Americans do, and then you say, you put it in God we trust, license plate on your car. I don't see God in your life. You tell me you go to the church, you help the pastor or something, or you clean the restroom in the church. You're part of the elderly ministry or something. Then I'm going to be a little more impressed. Then we have some boots on the ground. Okay, I have some evidence. I've had Christians where we fellowship and they pulled out some cigarettes and some snuff and they put on some acid rock, and I mean, they pulled out some smoke, and they put on some acid rock and stuff, and come on, I mean, like, not dressed properly and all of this. Listen, you know what? Brush your teeth. I mean, you got to show you care in order for people to be impressed with you in terms of, your demeanor, your persona. Let's move on with fear. We got into the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and a good understanding have they who do His commandments. Which means when you fear God, you also love God. That's the point. If you respect Him for His authority, you also love Him. Peter knows that the Lord wants him to get out there and to help people. That's what He wants him to do. He doesn't want him fishing. Thinking about, his marriage or something, all the time, or a man of the world. No, he's supposed to be devoted to the church purposes of saving souls, planting and nurturing souls. That's his job. And you can see how the Lord is. He didn't ask him anything but, do you love me? That's the point. I never had to ask my parents, do you love me? Because they're missing for 4 years or 2 months. If people leave you for 2 months and you love them and that's your family or something, they don't love you. That's the point. Because love is responsible. That's the point. Love is never irresponsible. And people know that. That's why they get mad at their relatives. Who harm them, who ignore them. I have a nice movie that's a little too emotional, whatever, with Mr. Stallone or whatever, and his son is hurt because he didn't get any letters and whatever. Because the boy is smart enough to know that when you love somebody, you communicate. If you don't communicate, you don't love. That's the point. If you're not there, you got to be there. Otherwise, it's not love. That's common sense. For most people, a lot of people know that. And when you fear the Lord, you love the Lord, and you respect Him, and you're going to do what you're supposed to do, and you're going to fulfill the royal law, and you're going to get busy doing something to help people, which is what the church is supposed to be doing. The reason why the Bible calls these end times the falling away is because people are wandering around in a maze, and they're whirlwinds and zombies. They really don't know what devotion is. I'm your friend this week, I'll see you next week, and unreliable. The double-minded man or woman, they're unstable in all their ways. That's what we're dealing with. People who don't have an honest fear and the respect of the Lord. Let's move on to 33 on my list. Okay, the do's and don'ts. Thou shalt not, thou shalt. Paul talks about the Pharisees who say that you must do everything in order to be saved and be right before God. The do's and don'ts. And if you mess up on one thing, then you're going to get punished exactly for what you did wrong, and we're going to keep track of you. That's a big part of Romans. Exacting punishment for every error. And because I have all the do's and don'ts right here in front of me. I'm going to use every law I know to hammer people, and the law is going to help me know God. I'm going to be legitimate before God through Moses' teachings, and that is perfection before God. I'm going to learn good so that I can be a learner of the law. And yes. And what happens? It becomes a show of pride. You have the law, which is good, but you're not applying it properly. You don't understand it. And furthermore, you didn't even listen to the middle of the law. You ignored the middle of Exodus. What did God say in the middle of the Ten Commandments? Well, these law people that Paul's referring to here in 32 through 36 is that they're basically just guys who are proud that they've done no sin according to their perspective. So they're performance oriented and show and performance. But the master comes along and Isaiah, etc., the Bible says to put the law in your heart. Okay, that changes everything, doesn't it? Now we have a new perspective. Not on tablets of stone. And how do you do that? You do that by paying attention to the middle of the Ten Commandments. That's how you do it. It's right there in your face. The master says, I have mercy on thousands who fear me. Well, there you go. That's the answer to the whole ball game of this have to do all the do's. You shouldn't do that and never do this and all of that. You're now free of that constraint. By putting the don't do's on your heart. And you do that by understanding the law of mercy, which is right in the middle of the Ten Commandments. Giving all of these, don't do this, better not do this. If you do, you're toast, more or less. Right in the middle of all that is what you might call a contradiction. But it's not a contradiction. It's just a method of teaching. That's all it is. I'm going to tell you the 10 things that I would never do that you humans do. That's what separates us. That's why I'm on high, and that's why you're on low. That's why I live forever. That's why you die. But in the middle of this expose of loserhood for the losers, in the middle is, I'm going to forget about your sin when you break these things if you fear me. So now we have the key to everything. Which a lot of the Hebrews are doing what? And they're not listening to a very simple elementary principle, especially repeated in the red letter edition King James Bible. A lot of them are rejecting what I just said. Even though it's right in the middle of the Ten Commandments that they embrace so ardently. Give me more commandments. Give me more of an obstacle course, and I'll run that obstacle course. I'm going to base my relationship with God on performance, and I'm going to not do all of these things. And you better not either. But right in the middle of all this, we have Moses' teaching, which is, wait a minute. I can be mercied with the law. I can teach the law in mercy. I can teach the holy standard and what God wants me to learn. He wants me to learn, thou shalt not commit adultery. However, learning thou shalt not commit adultery is not going to give me a right standing with God. That's the point. My right standing with God is based upon grace and mercy. But I do not throw the law away. That's why you have the Ten Commandments and mercy right together. And what was a good example? Look at Mary. Mary said that she's being mercied. And then she calls God holy. So in simple grammar, Mary is saying that God is pure and he still has a relationship with me and my fellow Israelites. And the relationship is he's going to work with us, he's going to use us, he's going to know us and love us, and even though we are not perfect. That's what she just said. She's giving you a microcosm of Exodus right there. Smack. We'll be right back.